Okay, so this is all about area with the Geometer Sketchpad. Our presenter today is Jennifer North Morris. And Jennifer, if you are set to go, I'm going to unmute you. And when you're ready, we can turn the screen over to you. Okay, Jennifer, so you're on. And let me know when you're ready to start showing your screen.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so I'm passing the screen control over to Jennifer, and we'll start the presentation.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Jennifer North Morris. I'm glad you all could join us here today in the morning, evening, middle of the night for some of you. Welcome from all over the world. This is so exciting to see people from everywhere. I started using Sketchpad in 1990. I learned about it at UCSD in San Diego in my teacher prep class, and I was so excited about this opportunity just to explore mathematics with these sketches. And ever since, I am by no means an expert, so I'm sure some of you know much more than I do, and please share, like Elizabeth said, please share in the chat message if you have great ideas to change the sketch or whatever. But this is a beginning Sketchpad workshop. We don't expect you to have any background in Sketchpad at all, so we're going to start with a clean slate. I taught high school and middle school for about 11 years in California, and now I primarily work with teachers, training teachers, and doing a lot with Common Core right now, and technology, and just getting our students to take charge of their learning and explore mathematics and have fun with it. So that's me, and I'm excited to be here. The purpose of the webinar today is to explore area, and we're not going to look at area from all different facets, but we'll choose a few things to look at with Sketchpad. So for example, by the way, you will have this sketch I've made and this sketch we will create together today. We will make that available for you, so you'll have it afterwards. We'll have it in the email and next to the recorded webinar when you have this. But here's a little example of what we're going to do. We're going to look at first the area of a parallelogram and just talk about, well, what is this area? How do we calculate this area? And what happens when we have a rectangle, or what happens when we have a parallelogram? How does that change? How does the area change? What makes the area change? That sort of thing. And so we're going to create this sketch and several sketches like it to explore area and have our students create some conjectures and that sort of thing. So, and don't worry, you will have this sketch, but you will also learn how to create it. So before we get started, I would like to find out a little more about our audience. And as many of you have seen, we have someone from Tokyo, someone from Croatia, someone from Australia, and then several people from the States. I know at least one person from Florida, so very exciting here. So let's see. First of all, let me launch this poll. There's the typo. Elizabeth said, there's a typo in the poll. How much experience have you had with the Geometry Sketchpad? So what I'd like you to do is just on your screen, select one of the following. None at all. I'm a beginner, I'm an intermediate, and I'm an advanced user. So, and well, it looks like we have several people. We have about 90% of you voting. I'll give you a couple more seconds. Okay, it looks like almost all of you have had a chance to vote. So let's look at this. Okay, let's look at the response. So it looks like we have a few of you have not had any experience at all. We have most of you are beginners, which is perfect. This is where you can be. Those intermediate and advanced users, please share with us. I love to learn new things. In fact, I'm taking an online course for Sketchpad right now, and it's very exciting to learn new things. So please join us and contribute as much as you want. Okay, I have one more poll, and then I promise we'll get started. I would just want to know what level you teach. What is your goal? Do you teach elementary school, middle school, high school, college? You teach college level math. It can also be work with pre-service teachers, or I don't teach. I just love Sketchpad. You might be a student. I didn't put that as an option, but we have several students who use Sketchpad to explore, several tutors that do that. So I'll give you a few more seconds to do this. All right, we even have some elementary teachers here. So almost all of you? Excellent. Thank you for participating. Looks like okay. I'm going to close the poll. And let's see. So about 7% from elementary. Most of you are from high school and middle school, a few from college, and a few of you don't teach. So welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for sharing your experience and what you teach. Okay, so let's get started, and please at any time feel free to use that little chat window, ask questions and that sort of thing. But first of all, we're going to go to Sketchpad and go up to File if you have it open, and just start with a blank slate. We're going to open a new sketch and make it as big as you want. It's up to you. And when you open Sketchpad, you'll have several tools on the left-hand side. And I'll just go over these tools quickly so you can see what they are. The first one is our selection arrow. There are when you hold and click, there are different types of arrows, and we will not be using these today. But if your arrow is ever doing something weird, like it's moving everything's in a circle, you probably have the wrong selection arrow selected. So the second one is a rotation, and the third one is dilation. But for this webinar, we are only going to use the selection arrow. The second tool here is a point tool, and that just allows us to construct tools. You just click around the screen, and you have several tools. The next tool is a compass tool. A lot of my kids call it the circle tool, which is fine. And when you draw a circle, you have 2 points that define that circle. And we will be using a circle today. The 2 points that define the circle are the center and then the radius. So you have those two. And notice that the center also changes the radius. And then if you want to just drag your circle around the place, if you grab the circumference, click on it to select it, you can just drag the circle without changing the radius. So that's your circle tool. If you're getting tired of everything on your screen and you want to clear it off, a very, very important command for Sketchpad is our Control-Z. Oh, by the way, I am using a Mac, as probably some of you have noticed, but this looks very similar on the PC. But undo is under Edit, and you can notice here is Command-Z. On the PC, it's Control-Z. And basically, that undoes everything that you just did. And if you hold it down on your keyboard and do Control-Z or Command-Z, it will clean out everything. Whoops, if we went too far, if you notice under Edit, it also gives you a Redo option, which would be Command-R, or you can select it from the menu. And it will redo everything you've done. So it will redo and undo until I found out when you make a new page, which we'll be doing that later, and when you save it and close it. Okay, so let's go back to our tools. The fourth tool down is our segment, ray, and line tool. And the first time I saw Sketchpad and the first time my students ever open it up and draw a line, it drives them crazy because they're so used to seeing a line with 2 endpoints, you know, with the 2 arrowheads on either end. But this is the definition of a line. It goes on forever and ever and ever. But don't worry if you have to print. When you print it, when they print the document, it adds those nice little arrowheads on there for you. So, but you know, your students will get used to it. The next tool down here is our Polygon tool, and there are 3 different options. You can just draw the interior. You can draw the segments plus the interior, or just the segments, the sides of the polygon. So, and we'll use that a little later. The next one is the text tool. Basically, if you select an item, it will label things for you, label points, label lines, and also if you double click in space, we will be able to add some text, and we will use that later. And then we have a marker tool, which we will use in a little while. This next tool, I don't even know what it's called, but it tells you about the parents, children. We won't be using that today. And then the last one is custom tools. Please join us for an intermediate or an advanced Sketchpad webinar, and I'm sure you'll learn about that, but we won't touch that today. Okay, but for now, let's get started. We want to look at that parallelogram. There you have a parallelogram. So either you can start with a new sketch, or you can Control Z to get everything out of there. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create a horizontal line. So, and I want to do a line, so I'm going to select my line here. And when I'm drawing my line, you just click anywhere in space, and then you have 2 points that define that line. If you hold the Shift button down, it will give us that horizontal line. It also does it at several different angles here. At one point, I think it's 15 degrees, it looks like. But if you hold the Shift down, it will give you that straight line across. So we have that nice horizontal line, which is nice for the presentation sketch that we're going to create. And what we want to do here is now we want another parallel line. Okay, so we want a parallel line to this line, horizontal line we have. So the first thing we need is we want to know we have the line that we want to be parallel to, but we need to tell Sketchpad where to put it. So we need to create a point. So use your point tool and put it anywhere in space. I'm going to put it above. You could also do it below. And so now I have a point and I have a parallel line, a line, and I want to create a parallel line through that point. So using my selection tool or power tool, you can hit escape. I want to select the point that I want the parallel line to go through and the line that I want it to be parallel to. Now notice that these are highlighted. Nothing else. These 2 points are not highlighted, but this point is. So I have those 2 things I need to use to construct. Then we're going to go up to construct, and we are going to choose parallel line. Now I'm going to go back. Before you do that, I'm going to go back. Let's say, for example, I just have this point, and I go up to construct, and it's not highlighted. It means that you probably forgot something to do. And so with parallel perpendicular lines, you always have to have what you want it parallel to and where you want to put it. So I highlight that point and that line, and we're going to construct those 2 there. Oh, I don't want perpendicular. Undo. This is just like, that's the problem when you do this webinar. You can't hear anybody giggling with you, so maybe it's not that funny. Okay, so now we have...
I can unmute if you want some giggles.
Oh, thanks. Okay, so now we have a parallel line, which is nice. When you do this, it's good to check it out. I always do my little drag test, see if it's really parallel. Okay, that's pretty cool. We can drag one of these. Oh, yeah. So it's pretty parallel. So it looks good no matter what we do. Okay, so this is one of the first sketches I ever did, and I was so excited. But in order to do it, I think I had to try it 3 times every time because I'd always mess it up. So here is the most important thing. I am going to hide these 3 points so that I don't accidentally use them to construct something else. And to hide points or hide anything, you highlight it. You can see all 3 of these I'm highlighted. And go to display and hide points, or it would say hide objects, hide lines. So now I have my parallel lines. I can still move it up and down, but I'm not going to accidentally use one of those points to construct something else. Okay. So now I want to create the base of my parallelogram. Okay, and the base, of course, you can ask your kids, okay, what would the base look like? Is it going to be a line? Is it going to be an array? Is it going to be a segment? So good vocabulary in there. So I'm going to choose my segment tool, and notice I just held it down and selected that first one with the segment tool. And I'm going to put the base on the bottom. You can put the base wherever you want. And notice when I selected that first, when I clicked for that first point, it highlights that line in red, which means, yes, that base is going to be attached to that line. and then I let go. Fancy Sketchpad 5. If you're using 4, it doesn't do this, but in Sketchpad 5, it's so cool because you have this base, it's a solid segment, and then the line magically turns into a dotted line. It's just showing that that's a guide. Very cool. I was very excited about that. Anyway, okay, so we have our base, and we can call it base if we want. It's up to you if you don't want to. Yes, yes, and Elizabeth shares that you can see down here, this little guy way down here in the right-hand corner, which is, some of you might need your reading glasses like me to see. It tells you what's going on. So for example, right now it says selected one segment. If I wanted to draw another line segment, I select my line segment. Notice down here in the right-hand corner it says from point on a parallel line. So it's telling me where it is. Right now it just says construct a segment somewhere. Okay, so that's a nice feature. It'll tell you if you're actually on the circle or that sort of thing. And then of course you could do a little drag test. I love drag tests. And just drag the ends of that segment because we want this to be dynamic. We want it to change. So we want to be able to change the base so we can see it go back and forth. So that's nice there. Okay, so we want to, let's label this. So we're going to use our label tool, which is the big A. And notice it turns into a little pointer finger. And if you come over to the segment, it turns black. So it's saying, okay, yes, that's what I want. And if you just click on it when it's black, it will give us a label. And notice you can drag that label around. And sometimes I like to test what it is labeling. Because for example, if I clicked on our original line here, L, it wouldn't stay in that segment, so I am labeling L instead. If you label something incorrectly, just click on it again, and it will disappear. Okay, so here we have our label, and if you notice, if you point to that label, it turns into A, which says, hey. And down in the lower right corner, it says, double-click to edit this panel, this label. So if we double-click on it, we can change the label. So let's call that base. And we're going to show our label. So there's our base, and you can move it around wherever you want. Okay, so now we have our base. So now what we want to do is we want to construct our parallelogram. So we need a side. So let's put another side, and of course since we did this parallel line, I'm just going to select another segment. And I am going to attach it. Notice it turns red, and down in the corner it says to point on parallel line. And we have one of our sides of our parallelogram. Okay. So now we need to figure out how do we construct this other side. What do we know about parallelograms? So we talk to your kids, what do you know about parallelogram? Oh, well the sides are parallel. Oh, so can we just, and I love to do this with my kids, can I just come over here and just draw it over here? Yeah, that looks pretty good. And some of my students do this all the time. They'll say, oh, I got a parallelogram. So they have to pass my drag test. And that's not something I made up. Sketchpad users have used it for years. Okay, let's test the drag test. Use the drag test. Drag things around. Oh, it needs to remain a parallelogram no matter what. And unfortunately, that did not do the trick. So somehow we need to construct a new segment to make that parallelogram. So I'm going to do my Control Z or Command Z or my little keyboard thing, and let's figure it out. Okay, so your kids will say, oh my goodness, let's go and let's do parallel lines. Okay, so this is the question. What do we need to tell Sketchpad in order to make that parallel line? Okay, what do we want it to be parallel to? We want it to be parallel to this side. Okay, yes. Where do we want to put the parallel line? Do we want to put it over here, up here, over here? And some of your students hopefully will come up, yes, we want to put it right there through that point. So we have a segment we're going to be parallel to, and we're going to have a point. So now we go up to our construct, and it's there, and we construct our parallel line. So now, before we go further, and believe me, I do this still today, I still do drag test. Ooh, that looks pretty good. Let's change the base. Yes. Maybe we got it there. It looks like we've got a great parallelogram. Oh, we can even move this parallel line. Oh, yes. Okay. So now we need to um, finish our parallelogram because we just have some lines. We don't really have a point over here. So the couple things to do, we want to add this segment up here. So I'm going to use my segment tool again. Click. I'm going to draw it from that point. So from point, we have our point here. And now notice I'm not near anything. So the lower right hand corner doesn't say anything. But over here I'm on that line still, but I want to come all the way over here. And notice both of those lines highlight. So they're both red. And it says on the bottom right, to intersection. Yes, that's exactly where I want it. Okay, so now I have the point there. And I need one more segment, and that's this one over here because I still only have a line. So while I have the segment tool highlighted, I can draw more segments. So I'm going to start from that point. It highlights it huge red. Notice I'm not anywhere, but oh yes, that's where I want to go, to that point. So now I've connected that. And the magic of Sketchpad 5 puts all those other lines that we use for construction as dotted lines. Just to make this a little cleaner, I want to hide this parallel line. Since we've drawn a segment in there, it looks nice. So first, click in space. Click in space is something I always say because we have this little guy highlighted, and if we highlighted this also and hit it, don't do this. My computer does it all the time. It hides everything. However, if I come and click in space, it deselects everything. Now, I'm just going to select that line. Okay, and notice down on the bottom it also says drag or deselect the parallel line. And I'm just going to hide that parallel line. And of course, you can leave the parallel line in there, but it just makes a pretty picture here. Okay, so now, of course, it would be very nice to fill in this parallelogram. So we're going to use our Polygon tool, and we could just use the first one since I've put all those segments in there for us. You can use the second one if you want. And I'm going to select that Polygon tool, and now it's just like dot to dot. You're going to go from one, click on each vertex, and notice when you've selected those two and going for the third, it will tell you where you're going. And I always do this. I always forget to complete it. So make sure you go to that last vertex to close your polygon because it will continue to change those polygons for you. Okay, so now notice that you have all these crisscrosses. That just means it's selected. If you click on it again, it will deselect. Let's just show you a few power moves right now. If you want to change the color, which is always fun for Sketchpad, when you have the polygon selected, or the parallelogram in this case, you can go up to Display and choose your color, whatever color you'd like. I like the purple. Or the other thing you can do is you can right-click on the object, and the little screen will come up with different colors for you. Okay, but what I would like you to do while you're playing with color is it would be nice to have our base be a different color. So if you highlight that and right-click or go up to Display, let's change our base so it's red also, just so we can show that that's a little different. Okay, so now what I'd like to do, and thank you for your questions. We have been, Elizabeth, wonderful Elizabeth has been addressing your questions, but that really helps other people to figure out how to do this. Okay, so now let's look at the area. And with Sketchpad, now you can select the polygon on Sketchpad 5, and we can actually go up to Measure, and it will measure the area for you. You can also right-click if you want. So before we go on further, and we're going to look at area of the parallelogram for a little while, I want to change some things here and see if the area changes. So for example, if I change the base, what happens to the area? Okay, if I make the base longer, oh, it's getting bigger. And these are conjectures that I'd like the students to talk about. Okay, so the base is changing it. When we have a longer base, it's a bigger area. Okay, what else can we change on here? Well, let's change C here. What's happening here? When I move C, nothing is happening. Okay, wow, okay, so that's kind of a shocker for some students. Okay, let's look at D. D changes. Ooh, what's happening? Now D is making my two opposite parallel sides, CD and BE closer. Ooh, that's changing the area. So what's changing there? So it's kind of fun to get the students to start checking it out. Okay, go along here. So what I like the students to do is make a conjecture. And it's so easy to do on Sketchpad. You don't need an extra piece of paper to do this. So you can select your A here and double click, and now we can say, okay, the area changes when I move the parallel lines. And we want students to be able to write about it. What is happening? What's describing? Describe what happens. Don't worry about, you know, the terminology of that sort of thing. It will come. Okay, we'll adjust that when I change the base, but you get the idea. Okay, so they make it a conjecture there. Okay. Oh yes, Elizabeth, should I address that if they have Sketchpad 4 for Polygon tool?
Well, yeah, two questions. The one was, do you tend to use this as a demonstration or in the computer lab? And then the Polygon tool is new for Sketchpad 5. So yes.
I will show how to do that in a second. So yes, I use it primarily as a demonstration tool. I'll have it all created, or I will create them with the students as we go along and ask questions as we go. If I want students to go into the lab, I will usually have a sketch, for example, like this, already created, like the one I showed you at the beginning, and then have questions that go along with it where they can explore. So that's the difference. And I'm showing you, this one is kind of a presentation, but it's also, we can construct it together as a class. So that's the one question. Oh, the other thing, the Polygon tool is new for Sketchpad 5. However, don't worry, you can still do polygons on Sketchpad 4. So let us, I'm going to get rid of this. I'm just going to delete it. We'll get rid of that area. To do this, and you can do this on 5 too, to create a polygon interior, select the vertices in order, just like you would name a polygon, B, C, D, E, it doesn't matter. Counterclockwise, clockwise, it doesn't matter. And go up to construct, and it will tell you quadrilateral interior, just construct the interior. And that will give us the same type of thing. Look, it's changing colors for us. And then the same thing, if you want to do the area, when you have it highlighted, go up to measure, and it will measure the area. So yes, it will do the same exact thing. You just don't have this fancy polygon tool. So, and everything we're doing right now is you're able to do it in even Sketchpad 3. So I think, gosh, probably the first time I did the sketch, it was probably like Sketchpad 1.5 or something. I don't know. So yes, this is all doable. Okay, so we're looking at area, we're talking about it. So the students will come up with, okay, well, when we move this, it changes the area. So what's going on? And hopefully at some point the students say, well, we're changing how high it is, how tall it is. Yes, we are, exactly. So how could we find the height of this thing? How could we find the distance between those two parallel lines? So, and hopefully some of your students have had experience with it. Well, we need to find that distance. Okay, what would that distance look like? Oh, if we draw it over here, it would look like straight. Oh, so what are characteristics of that? Well, it looks pretty perpendicular. Yes, we want to do something perpendicular. Okay, so now we want to drop a perpendicular, and you could do it from D or C. I'm going to do it from C because it's over here on the side. So what do we want it to be perpendicular to? So we want to put it through C, but we want it to be perpendicular to this horizontal line that we used first, and I double-clicked for some reason. Okay, so now we have the point C, and we have that line, the horizontal line. So I'm saying put a perpendicular through point C and make it come down to that original horizontal line. When you have both of those highlighted, go up to construct, and we will do a perpendicular line. Okay, so now we can see that, oh yes, and we noticed that's something else from triangles, a little altitude there. Okay, so we go across. But I just want to see the height, and the height is not that whole line. So we just want part of it. So we can just draw that segment over the top, start at C, and go all the way down to that intersection. And we can see those two. And now we have that. And just to let you know, those of you who are using Sketchpad 4, if you have Sketchpad 4, I know it doesn't automatically show up as a dotted line, but if you highlight that line and go up to Display or right-click, you can choose the line style, dotted, dash, solid, for your lines, because it's not as fancy as Sketchpad 5. But feel free to download the new version. It's kind of exciting to play with. Okay, so now we have this, and again, I want to hide this. Go up to Display and hide my perpendicular line. So now I have this height, and we can see our height there. And let's label it. So I'm going to use the A, and I'm going to label that point when it turns black, and we're going to call that height. Okay, so now we have this little height guy there. You can change the color if you want. You don't have to. So now we want students to, okay, let's use height in our conjecture. Okay, so let's talk about the area. So you can either change your conjecture, or we can make a new conjecture. It's up to you. Oh, we didn't even title this. You can title it Area of a Parallelogram. Look, I even spelled it correctly. And then we can do a conjecture here. Okay, so the area, and you can talk about what it is. Okay, the area of a parallelogram, blah, remains the same. Okay, so blah, 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 when you do this. Okay, so we go through and we talk about, well, what do we know about area? Well, we know rectangular. They've been doing the area of a rectangle since they were in 3rd grade. I know because I have a 3rd grader. And we always do height times base. So let's calculate that. Let's look at that. Okay, so let's go and measure the height and the base. So I'm going to select both of those segments, height and base, and we're going to go up to measure, and we're going to measure the lengths here. So now we have our height and our base. Well, let's look at this. The area here did not change if we kept the height and the base the same. If we change the height, the area changed, but then if we kept that same height, oh, it all stays the same. So what if we just tried it? Let's try and see if the area for a parallelogram is actually height times base all the time. So if you go up to number, now this is in Sketchpad 5, calculate is under number. On Sketchpad 4, it's under measure, and it's down towards the bottom. It says calculate. Okay, but it works the same. So you go to calculate, and we want to calculate the height times the base. And so I'd like to click on height times the base, or you can go and click on the drop-down menu that says values, and height and base are there for you. So either way, you can do that. So I want height times base. Look at this. Let's see, does those match? Does that change, or do we just type it in there? Whenever I do this, my students are like, no, you just wrote in 116.54. But then I show them that the height and base can change. So it's kind of fun to see the students playing with height and base, and they'll all want to come up and try it, or try it on their own on their computer. Well, what if I do this? What if I change this? What if I move it around so it's up and down, perpendicular? So they'll go around and change with that. So let's, I just saw another chat thing. D just moves across. It also changes the height. So basically, this point C, I put C on the line so it could just drag freely. D was constructed by using, by making that parallel line to CB. So B depends on C, so it's not going to change much. It's just going to be connected to C the whole time. So, okay. So, yeah, and if you label these differently, it will change out. Okay, so what I want to do is, let's go from here and let's look at a triangle. Okay? Unless there are any burning questions, Elizabeth?
No burning questions yet. I just want to emphasize that depending on when something is constructed to stay parallel, then that kind of restricts it. And so because D was constructed on a line, that was restricted to stay parallel to BC, that kind of changes the way D moves as compared with C. The other thing I just wanted to point out was the hot text. I don't know if you'll be showing that.
Oh yes, thank you, Elizabeth. That was on my notes, and I didn't put it here. So yes, so let's continue our conjecture here before we go on. Yay! And let's do another. Actually, let's just edit our text here. So we're going to say the area of a parallelogram equals the height, and you can just click on height, or we can click on our little height here. And then we can type it out, like put space times the base. And now, when you have this hot text in here in your conjecture, oh, and this does not work on Sketchpad 4, sorry, but it will show you what you're talking about. That position height, that's the base, and it will highlight. Super cool when you're demonstrating this using it as a demonstration or an example sketch for you. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, and feel free to play with that some more. Okay, so I think we'll go on. Let's do a triangle now. But we've already done a lot of the stuff that we need to do for a triangle. So why don't we just copy this sketch and open up a new page? Okay, I'm going to show you. Oh, by the way, you might want to save. I haven't saved this, just in case. Okay. So now we're going to go up to File, and under File there's a menu option called Document Options. This will also work in Sketchpad 4. And now this is where, just like Excel, where you can have several different pages, this comes in really handy if you're going to do several things with Sketchpad. So here we're going to add a page, and we want to duplicate. Notice the pull-down menu comes up from Duplicate 1. And if you want to name these pages, let's call the first one, if you highlight 1, page name. I'm going to call that Parallelogram. And then page 2, let's call that Triangle. Triangle. There we go. Okay. So now notice we have two little tabs down here. One says Parallelogram and one says Triangle. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry that you see these extra ones. There we go. So one says Parallelogram, one says Triangle. We're going to work in Triangle. We're going to have to change some stuff. I am just going to click and drag and delete some of these text boxes that we did. We don't need those. And if you double click up here in your title, if you put one up there, let's change that to Triangle just before we forget. Okay. And notice when you have your text open, you have all these different options. You can put fractions in there. If we get a chance, we'll get to that. You can change the color, the size, the style. That's all up there for you. And if you don't have that, under Display, there's a Hide Show Text Palette. So that's there for you. And that is also in Sketchpad 4. Okay, so now let's look at a triangle. And how does a triangle, how does that relate to this? Okay, so what we want to do is we want to create a triangle, and I'm going to move my height inside my parallelogram. I want to create a triangle with the same base and the same height. So to do that, I am basically going to use my segment tool, and I'm going to construct my segment CE over here. Okay, so now we have our little triangle there, and we see that triangle, and it'd be really cool to put the little guy in here, maybe fill that in so it looks like a triangle. So two ways to do it. You can use the Polygon tool and just select and match those vertices for our triangle. And notice I made my orange. I have to finish it. I always forget that. And you can also change the color if you want. It's a little hard to see. Let's make it blue. There you go. A little better. Or on Sketchpad 4, you would highlight each of those vertices. So you have those three. So now we can do the triangle. Okay? So the first thing you might ask your students are, how do you think that area of the triangle compares with the area of that original parallelogram? Well, it looks like half. Well, let's try it. And we're not doing proof. We're doing this inductively. But let's see. First, let's do the area of the parallelogram. Highlight that parallelogram and then select area. So there's our area of the parallelogram. And now, if you just select the triangle, notice that only the crosshairs are on the triangle, and go up and we're going to measure that area. Well, how do they compare? Let's see. They look like they're about half. Oh, do they change? Oh, when does it change? If we change the base, ooh, it's working just the same as it was before if we change the height and the base. But is it truly half? What can we do? Well, we can use our calculate again. Under measure, if you're using Sketchpad 4, if you're using 5, under calculate. Okay. So now we go to calculate, and let's see. Okay. So I want to know, is the area of the triangle half the area of my parallelogram? So let's put that in. Let's say, okay, I want to take 0.5, just because it's easier, times, and I'm going to go up here to my parallelogram. Okay, is it half of that area? Let's see, let's check it out. And there we go. Yes, we see that. Okay, base and height are the same, but if we change that base, will those always stay the same? Yes. So that area looks like half the base. Okay. So we can make conjectures with it, and we can do the formulas again and figure out what that is. So nice. And then we can sit there and talk about the area. If you want to hide the parallelogram, we could hide it. You could even, if you're doing this as a presentation sketch, you could have this parallelogram available. And this is kind of a more advanced move. But if you highlight your parallelogram and go up to Action button, there's a Hide Show. And so this is Hide Quadrilateral. I'm just going to drag it down there. I grabbed it by that little orange section and dragged it down. Now if you click on Hide Quadrilateral, it will disappear. And then we could show quadrilateral. If I was thinking ahead of time, you could also at the same time have the sides of the parallelogram hidden if you want to do that. So, okay. So now we have our triangle, and we can show our triangle. So we can see the difference. So when I'm talking about area, I always like to go down to what do we know? And we really start with that parallelogram. Okay, we know base times height. So now we have here, and let's do that formula. Let's do our little conjecture. Let's add some hot text here. And let's say the area of a triangle. And we can put equals. And now, if you have your text palette showing, we can use the little fraction guy here. And I want to put 1/2. And this kind of works like a math type equation editor kind of thing. You have to use the arrows to move around. 1/2, and I'm going to take it times the height. Oops, I clicked the wrong thing. Click it over. So I'm going to do this. Let's see if we can get it on there. There we go. I clicked on that height bar. Times, and we can even put a little times in here. If you use the pull down menu, you have a big times or little times. Times, and we're going to come down here to that base. And so we have that base, and then we're done. And I'm going to drag that little black square, if you can see it, will allow you to drag your text figure there. Okay, so I will show you how to make the action button in a second. So now we have our hot text here. So we have the area of a triangle is 1/2 times the height, and you can see the base there. Okay, the hot text works with angles, any kind of measurement. We can use the area measurement kind of thing. This button, let me show you how to use the button again. Basically, you highlight your parallelogram, and then under Edit, there is a menu item for action buttons, and this is a Hide Show. And if you're doing presentations, that usually helps a lot because there's some things that I don't want to show everybody right away, so you might want to hide your quadrilateral. And that did that. Okay. Okay.
And
oh, did I see?
Jennifer, there was a comment about the precision, the number of decimal places. Do you want to show the preferences
Oh,
for
yes.
changing that?
Yeah, because every once in a while, your students, it won't come up to be exactly half because of the rounding error. So under Edit, there's a wonderful menu called Preferences. If something's not working like you'd like it to, go to Preferences. It's probably there. Under Preferences, there's lots of things for text. You can change that for your tools. Under Units, it gives you options for precision. So we've been working with distance, so you can have it all the way up to hundred thousandths. If you're working with units, you can use units. The default is hundredths, so that's how you can change that. Okay, color, it will let you do different things with that. Text, it will automatically label points, kind of thing. So several things in here for your preferences. All right, any other questions? All right, so one thing I want to add, this isn't really area, but one of my favorite things to do, especially in the lower grades, is when you talk about the altitude of a triangle. Sometimes it's very difficult for students to understand where the altitude is. So go to File, and we're just going to copy another sheet again. So let's do another sheet, and this isn't going to be area, but it's going to be altitude. Okay, so we're going to go to Document Options, and we are going to add a duplicate page of our triangle. Again, just like we did before, but I'm going to call this altitude, and this is totally extra. Okay, so now what I want to do, I want to delete a bunch of stuff. So, and I want to actually hide under display. I'm going to hide my quadrilateral, because if I deleted my quadrilateral, everything would go away. And I am going to hide these little the segments of my parallelogram, just because if I delete them, everything might just go away, and I don't know. Oh, look, my mouse went crazy. Okay, so now let's look, if you just have this basic sketch, and we can call it the altitude of a triangle. What's nice when you're first talking about triangles, you can talk about, well, what is the height? Where is the altitude? And we can change this to altitude, sorry. To change the label, use the label tool and double click on that label, and we can call it whatever you want. Okay, so there's our altitude. So now this basic sketch has helped so much in my classroom, because we always talked about altitude. Okay, what about altitude of a right triangle? Oh, it's one of the legs. Okay, what about the altitude in an acute triangle? Oh, the altitude's inside. And I'd be trying to write this on the board, show them, what about the altitude in an obtuse triangle? And this was always a huge struggle for students to visualize. What does that mean? Where is that altitude? I don't understand where it goes. And so it's really nice to show that that altitude's there. Another cool thing you can do, let me see, is if we use our marker tool here. It's right below the A. And if we come over here and kind of draw a little angle, like you're going to mark an angle on that altitude, and you let go, the cool thing about this is it will automatically show you that is a right angle. So now we can even show that the altitude is actually a right. It's perpendicular to that base, no matter where you are. So this has saved me so many hours for the kids to understand what that altitude really means and what these parallel lines have to do with it all. So, okay. So, oh, yes, marker tool is for Sketchpad 5. Sorry, but it's very, very cool for whiteboards when you're doing that. This is the best thing about that. Oh, and that was the other thing. Oh, I didn't show you. Using the marker tool, since we're there, we can show that lines are congruent. I don't have any congruent lines here. But another thing you can show is the parallel lines. So if you use your marker tool and you click on one of the parallel lines, it will show that it's, it'll give you that little segment that'll show you that it's equal. But if you right-click or go up to Properties under Display, what we can do is we can change this to an open arrow. I think that's what I want. And you can see that little open arrow going there. If you double click, it will put 2 arrows, 3 arrows, 4 arrows. And I want to put double click because that's it. And then if we go down to this marker tool too, it would automatically do that there. So that's a huge, nice feature with Sketchpad 5 is just being able to show that those are parallel. So feel free to go back to our parallelogram and triangle and add those. I skipped that in my notes. Okay, so this is just a nice little presentation sketch for area. You can use it as an intro to area. Okay, do you have any questions, Elizabeth, before we go on? Let me show though one last thing. We only have 10 minutes.
No questions. Yeah, I think, but feel free to pop in with questions in the chat panel. We have some comments. We've been kind of chatting away about different things in there.
Cool, cool. Okay, good. And if you're really bored, you know, you can always mute me and just ignore it. Okay, so let's do one more thing. Let's look at a polygon, a regular polygon. So let's add another page, and we're going to do that with File under Document Options, and add a page again. But this time I'm going to add a blank page because I'm not, for my polygons, I'm not going to start with a parallelogram or a triangle. So blank page, and I'm going to call this a regular polygon. This is kind of a fun thing. Now, when you're starting to construct things on Sketchpad, it's fun for me, just as a mathematician, to kind of figure out, okay, how would I construct a square? Because I have a compass and I have a point, and how would I do this? How would I do different things? So I always have to go back, how would I construct a regular polygon? And I know there's some custom tools out there and fun, but let's think about it. For a regular polygon, I'm going to start with a circle. Okay, so I'm going to start with circle, and here's my circle. And with a regular polygon, we know that each side is the same, so they're all congruent. Ooh, so we could use those tick marks. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to, if I could rotate this point around, I could actually create a regular polygon. So let's do a pentagon. And so if we rotated this by 72 degrees, because we know the interior angles are 72 degrees, we could get a pentagon here. So the first thing you're going to do after you have your circle is we are going to rotate something, and I need a center. So I'm going to select my center on either, there are two ways you can do this, both Sketchpad 4 and 5. You can double click, and it goes, woo, woo, it says, yes, you want me to use this one. Or we can just select it, then go up to transform and mark center, and it will do the same thing, woo, woo, so we know that that's our center. And we basically want to rotate this point around that center, and magically, because it's defined by that circle, it will stay on that circle with that radius. So I'm going to select this point, and I'm going to transform. And this one I want to rotate. And this one I want to rotate by 72 degrees. Okay, and notice what's really nice about this version is you can see that little shadow saying, hey, 72 degrees. Some of you might be wondering, why isn't it this way? It always does it just like the unit circle as you're going around. So always we're going counterclockwise. Okay, so 72 degrees, that looks great. Yes, rotate it. And then we're just going to continue that. Go up to transform. Rotate again, and we're going to continue around. Hopefully, if I did the angles right, we will rotate all the way. So now we see we have that pentagon here. Now, to do this pentagon, I want to use the Pentagon tool. You can use that. Or what you can do is we can just construct segments in here because I also want the sides. Okay, so use your Pentagon tool with the segments or connect the dots. Of course, do the drag test. Make sure everything's stuck on there because sometimes when you're doing construction with circles, you don't always make it to there. So yes, that works. And in the meantime, let's hide that circle. Okay, so now we have our pentagon. And now we can also fill in the inside by selecting all those vertices and constructing the interior, or we can use our polygon tool. So either one. It's green this time. Complete your polygon. Okay, so now what I'd like to have the students do is say, okay, how can we find the area of this pentagon? And of course they'll say, well, have Sketchpad measure it. Okay, I'll have Sketchpad measure it. But unfortunately, we're not always going to be near Sketchpad to find the area of that pentagon. So how can we do this? What can we find? For those of you that the B prime, it's driving you crazy, you can use the text tool just to change it. So we can double click on that, call that C if you want. Go through and change that if you want. It's up to you. And notice when you change the labels, the measurement up here changes also. So it's up to you if you want to do that. Okay, so now, but we go back to, okay, so we have the area, we can change that, but what do we know? How can we find the area? What do we know about area? Well, we know how to find the area of a triangle. Okay, yeah, you're right, we do. Okay, so are there any triangles in here? So we can look at this. Yes, here's a triangle here. Okay, how does that triangle compare to the area in here? So we can look at that. Well, if we make that triangle, let's look at that. And we find the area, just like we did with the parallelogram. We can say, well, how does that compare? So you find the area. Oh, what do you think? How many triangles would be in here? Oh, there's 5. Okay, so we can go through and do that, and similar to what we did with parallelograms. But since we're kind of running out of time, I want to show you what this leads to. You know, we always have that formula 1/2 AP, the apothem times the perimeter. Well, if you look at this, we talk about that, okay, there's 5 of those triangles. Well, how can we find the area of the triangle? Well, we need the height and the base. Well, we have the base. We can call this, let's call it S. Okay, so that's a side. And then how would we find the altitude? Oh, the perpendicular. So we want to do a perpendicular to that side there. So I'm going to highlight my A and my side. So we have our perpendicular. Okay, and then we can draw in that height, which, at least in the textbooks in the U.S., we call it the apothem. And so what students can explore is say that, okay, so we can take this apothem, or this height here, times by the side, and multiply that by 1/2. That'll give you the triangle. And then multiply that by 5 triangles. You can actually see that it's 1/2 A times the perimeter. So something to explore with, and I will have an example in the sketch that I attached to my webinar. Before we go, I know there's a lot of stuff we've learned about. There's the help menu. In Sketchpad 4, there's a help menu. You can search kind of things. The one thing I love about Sketchpad 5 is the Learning Center. The Learning Center is absolutely amazing. When I first wanted to learn about all the new features of Sketchpad, they have these videos here that tell you what's new in Sketchpad. There are getting started tutorials, which will show you all about constructing different things. It is fabulous. There are videos on these, and what you can do, you have an introductory movie. You can have Sketchpad open and you can be watching the movie at the same time, just like this webinar. So those are great added features. I thank you all. Elizabeth, do we have any last-minute questions?
Let's see. We don't have any questions. We had Leanne said that she was just going to be covering regular polygons, so this was good timing. And Adrian has, I think, a contribution on Sketch Exchange about area concepts, so I recommend people look for that. Learning Center is through the Sketchpad help menu. So even if you download the trial version of Sketchpad, you go to the help menu, you can get to the Learning Center even with the trial version of Sketchpad 5. And Sketch Exchange is free for everyone. You have to register if you want to upload, but if you want to download, you don't even have to register. And Sunny asked about the online course, and you want to give a little plug for the online course, Jennifer?
The online, you know, the first time I took an online course, I was really worried that it would be just way advanced, but Key Press has so many different levels of online courses. There are ones for basic beginners, and there are online courses for advanced, and basically they have some videos there that you can watch to kind of learn how to do it. And then, unlike this, they have a worksheet that will guide you through. Construct circle with center D, and it actually steps you through step by step how to construct it. And then you'll usually have a project during the week where you need to create something. But what's great about the online course is there's this dialogue with all the participants. Oh, look at this. This was a great way to do this sketch, and then they comment on yours. It's a great learning environment to do that.
All right, that's great. And so again, some people came on late, so I just want to emphasize we'll have this video posted by the end of the week. All attendees get an email, and it will have a certificate of attendance. It will have a link to the recording, and then Jennifer's file with these sketches completed will be also posted there. And when you close out of the webinar, you'll get an evaluation. There'll be a poll, and please fill that out because we do read all of your comments, and we try to meet the needs of a diverse group of attendees, and we have lots of thank yous. Jennifer, you did a fantastic job. That was really a lot of fun. So thanks so much, everyone, for spending an hour with us, and thanks to Jennifer for a great presentation.
Thank you. Have a great week, you guys.
Okay, and I'll leave this open for just another second, and then we'll be closing it down. But again, you'll get an email with a link to the video and with the file that Jennifer just created for y'all.